Good evening, punters, and welcome to another episode of The Tripod, where we break down every NRL game every week from a punting perspective. This week we'll be going through what we saw in round 12 and another really good week. And I think a lot of people kind of gloss over the record for this week and dismiss it, but we went 5 wins and 2 losses off only 7 best bets that we gave out. We said at the start of the week we didn't love the week. We're quite selective with our plays. But if you go 5 and 2 every week, you are going to be bloody rich. It's the same as going 10 and 4, 15 and 6, and I think people might, jump up and down and celebrate that a bit more. But 5 and 2 being selective is very, very good.
That's right, over 70% winners, and it was a tricky round, and we're here having watched all 8 games to break it down for you. Maybe you didn't get to see all the matches, and if you just saw the score, might not tell you the full story, really depending on what you thought about the game that just ended in Storm Knights. I'd say 7 of the 8 were quite competitive matches, so 7 of the 8 favourites. Although 7 favourites won this round, the only upset was actually the Warriors, which we'll get to. A lot of them did not have it their own way, so I think we were justified in staying away from a few games. We were on 3 underdogs, and we did make good money in 2 of the 3 games we picked, and we got one horribly wrong. You might also be watching this and admiring my hoodie, which we wear sometimes in the winter months.
Yes.
I should say we're doing a little promo, a bit of a giveaway in our group. As a thank you to you guys, we're approaching 20,000 group members, which really you do pinch yourself because, Alex, you can remember this as well.
Yeah.
When we started in 2015, if we got one like on our Facebook page, like one additional like, and we were getting like 1 or 2 a week, we would message each other and be like, did you just see we got a like on our Facebook page? So to get up towards 20,000 members, what we're asking you guys to do is add any mates you can to the group and then comment on the announcement post. And we're going to give $100 cash, just cold hard cash. You'll get that for next weekend, and a couple of these hoodies.
Yeah, and what you failed to mention as well is back in the day, I think 2017, we built the group from nothing, like you said, to I think over 25,000 members, and then Zuckerberg decided to crush us. So it's been a long, slow slog from then, but we are slowly making our way back. So yeah, like Jacob said, head on over to the group. And honestly, I don't own many hoodies, but that is one of the comfiest hoodies that you can have. And just in time for winter, it's starting to get a little bit cold. Let's talk about the game that we just saw. It was the Storm beating the Knights 26 points to 16. We didn't have a best bet on the game. Like we discussed in the preview, we kind of thought that the plus 14 points was probably a little bit too high for the Knights. And then basically as soon as we finished the pod, we realized that line dropped to minus 9.5, minus 10.5 for the Storm without any personnel info. So look, it's a strange one. Probably one of the ones that I've never seen in my punting life before, where a line shifts 5 points within the space of an hour off no personnel news. But maybe the line was too high, and maybe we should have taken Knights. And I guess in hindsight, it looks that way because they covered the line. They lost by 10, but they needed a late try to do so. And in saying that, the Storm were better, and Cam Smith went off in the first half in this one. And the Storm, just another pretty clinical win. I never thought the Knights had a chance in that one. And I guess the big news everyone's going to talk about is Cam Smith injury, but it's not as bad as the commentators were saying it's going to be. They're saying he's going to be out for 1 to 2 weeks. But I would like to get to, and I know you might disagree with me here, Jacob. I know that Dan Lever in our group disagrees with you, but Mitchell Pearce, he did not do enough in this one. I think it's been, not necessarily the whole season, but he's putting up these kind of half bombs that have become quite common that I've seen from him, which doesn't quite give the attacking players enough time to get through and contest, and it doesn't trouble the defense. And controversial opinion, maybe, but I think the only halves that do those are people that can't accurately kick high enough to kick it into the corner. So Pearce hasn't been good enough, but in saying that, another really good win from the Storm. I will just add 2 games today, right? And I'll go on a rant for the last game that we talk about with the Bulldogs. But once again, not taking the 2 when it's on offer. The Knights were down 14 points with 10 minutes to go. You know you need 3 scores. You're not going to score 3 tries in 10 minutes. So take the 2 in front of the sticks when you get it down 14. It boggles my mind that these teams continue to fuck up taking the 2 when it's so obvious. It is simple maths.
Importantly, you mentioned Dan Lever, one of the guys behind the scenes that does a lot of work to help us run an awesome group and get towards 20,000 members. And it was his 40th happy birthday. Danny is an avid Knights fan, but he sometimes gets torn if he has to bet against the Knights because he's also a very loyal pod follower. And you should see the bloody water park he has out the back of his house, thanks to many pod best bet winners over the years. He wouldn't disagree with you. He's been quite critical of Mitchell Pearce, and usually a passionate fan knows his team's key players better than anyone. And yeah, I was watching Pearce with an eagle eye today. He didn't look great, but the Storm don't let you play great. Cameron Smith, as you mentioned, a couple of unusual things. He scored a try. He rarely does that, and he got injured, which is even more rare. Shoulder injury, they're saying, but yeah, it doesn't seem to be too serious. And we didn't want to take the points with the Knights. You're right. It was a crazy phantom line move to be 14.5 into 9.5 when you're going through the key numbers of 14, 12, and 10. When we heard that, we're instantly like, that Storm must have 3 players out. So for that to not happen, I can only assume some people just thought the line was too high and loaded up on it. Well done. They got in the back door, I suppose, and they got the win with that bet. But we were comfortable not being on the Knights because we knew the Storm, like at their new found home on the sunny coast, are just a bit too clinical. And the Knights, you're seeing the limitations. And I mean, they've got some troops out, and they're just not quite the elite of the elite, but they did fight hard today.
Indeed, they did. Let's move on to the early Friday game. It was the Rabbitohs beating the Dragons 32-24, and along with that, me losing another $200 bet to Jacob. I was on the Dragons plus 4 points, and look, it looked like it was in the bag. They're up 16-0 very early. Dufty was awesome in the first half, a couple of tries, and I've said this a number of times that he has to stay there at fullback for this Dragons side, because in a team that's like stacked with, representative level front rowers, it's like the halves are not really awesome playmakers. So he adds that spark to the Dragons attack, which you really do need, especially with these new rules. And he's going to make some mistakes as well, but I think you really do need him in the team. He threw an intercept pass in this one, but even so, I still do think that he has to stay in the team. But I mean, the Dragons, it's absolutely brutal. You're going, trying to make the top 8 here. You're up 16-zip. Reynolds goes off injured in the first half, and you're thinking at that point, this game is the Dragons to lose. And then Cody Walker went to another level. And I just want to say, like, Cody Walker had a fucking awesome game. Rabbitohs were completely on top of this game. Should have won. Yes, Frizzell had a dodgy try towards the end of it, but the Rabbits still win. What I would say, a lot of people are going to watch this game and say, Rabbits don't need Adam Reynolds, because Cody Walker went to another level. It's fine, and it happens a lot with punters. I see, a key player gets injured, that team still wins the game, looks impressive, and they kind of forget that. So I'd say just, if you're betting next week and in the coming weeks, if Adam Reynolds is out, I haven't heard too much about it, but just be aware that, this is not going to be the same Rabbitohs team without Adam Reynolds just because they played well in this one.
It was even more impressive that they made the comeback without him. This game was a bit like the Dragons last week when they played the Sharks. Just super high scoring, super entertaining game, which there were many this round to kick off round 12. And whoever had the ball looked like they could score. And you're right, Dragons got out to 16-0, but then the Bunnies rolled all the way back and scored, I think, 30-4 through the middle stages of the game. Before then, I think 1 or 2 late tries by the Dragons pulled it close again. The Bunnies are showing you that when they click, they're pretty slick. They run good shape and they can get the ball to their good outside backs. Latrell was back and had a mixed bag, but scored a good try. And he definitely lifts them. But you're right, it was the Cody Walker show, and he had that eye of the tiger that he was going to will his team to victory. Whether it's Indigenous round meant more to him, or I think also just he knew Reynolds was out. He said, it's on me, get on my back, and he carried him. And it's a big win for the Bunnies, a team that should definitely be pushing for the 8. Whereas I feel like the Dragons, you blew last week was 50-50 against the Sharks. This week, as you say, you're up 16-0, you're at home, and the opponent loses their captain and halfback. I mean, you can't recover from that, I don't think. They're certainly not going to make the 8.
No, they won't. It's a funny one you mention that, because we always talk about, good teams having a loss and then looking towards the bounce back. And then some of these teams like the Dragons, like the Tigers that we're going to talk about now, it's a lot tougher to bounce back from a brutal loss, either against a bad team that you should have beaten or a team that you're up against and then gave away the lead. And, the previous is what happened to the Tigers here. They lost 20 points to 26 against the Warriors. Another game that we didn't have any best bets on. And it's just a brutal loss for this Tiger side that was sitting just outside the 8. You have to win this one. I think you mentioned, Jacob, if you want to make the 8, like the Tigers haven't made it in ages, you really have to be able to win this game as a $1.15 favourite or whatever they were. And, not only that, they scored the first 2 tries, and after that, it's such a gutsy effort from the Warriors because you played your heart out last week against the Roosters. You came up short. And, that's why we didn't take the Warriors in this one because the line looked, a little bit too high. But there was a chance that you could fold. You had some players that went home. You gutsed out, a really, really hard game last week, physically and emotionally draining last week. And then to concede the first 2 tries and then come back and win is a really, really gutsy effort from this Warriors side. So absolutely take nothing away from them. I think it certainly helped that the Tigers missed their first 2 conversions because 8-0 looks a lot different to 12-0. But massive props to the Warriors, and I really do worry about, most of the time you'd say bounce back spot for a Tigers team next week, but that could be just a really deflating loss.
It is tough for the Tigers because they've had quite a few performances this year, like the Penrith loss, even the Eels loss, where if they would, and the Raiders loss, where if they would have played that well when they actually played like the Titans and the Warriors, it probably would have been enough to beat those teams. But it seems to be they played down to the level of their competition. And I agree, goal kicking is a weakness of the Tigers, and it was 8-0 when they'd scored 2 straight tries. And you're thinking, well, they'll run up a score. Next second, they let the Warriors in, and it's 8-6, and it's suddenly, fully game on again. And they will be extremely disappointed that the Tigers, again, you see their limitation, and I've said all season, I think they're going to come 9th. And if anything, could be even a place or 2 below that now. And the Warriors, it was a great fight back. I'd say that if anything, they gained energy by the new recruits that came into the squad. There's still going to be a hit and miss proposition. I just can't see, them being consistently strong and willful every week. And we've really struggled with picking when they're going to be on and off. We've had very mixed results with the Warriors, even though we're on 63% this year. I don't even know if we're profitable across Warriors games this season. So we'll do our best to try and pick when they may be up, when they might not. In this game, we weren't sure, so we left it alone, and that's probably a fair enough call.
Yeah, and another game that we left alone was the Sharkies beating the Broncos 36 points to 26. We thought that the Broncos might be the sharp side, catching, 4.5 points at Suncorp. And for 60, 70 minutes of that game, it certainly looked that way. And what a crazy game. 6 tries in the first half. Broncos are up, 8 points, and they concede, the last, were they up 8 and they conceded 4
They conceded the final 18 points.
They conceded the final 18. So they conceded, 3 tries in a row to lose by 10. And, in hindsight, and it's easy to say in hindsight, but in hindsight, overs was probably the play. We've been saying all year that the Sharks are an over team, and this is certainly a game where it showed. The Broncos found some holes in the Sharks' defense, which are not there with other defensive sides. They put up 26 points, and it's rare for the Broncos to put up 26 points against anyone. And the Sharkies can just score points on anyone. And look, a boost to this Broncos team was Staggs. He was the man of the match for mine. He was awesome, and just his energy level, like he made some awesome plays, scored 1 or 2 tries, made that awesome try-saving tackle. But just like, he's getting up from that, he's jumping in the air, and that's something you kind of haven't seen from any Broncos players all year long. And it goes back to what you said a few weeks ago, Jacob, is that there's no real leadership there. And I think he can really take on that role because honestly, it's contagious, that kind of stuff. Like someone's getting up, making a big tackle, like getting going. It is contagious. So, I hope it continues for this Broncos side. That was certainly the best game that they've played in a while. But I worry about them moving forward because to put in such a big effort to be up late in a game and then let it slip once again, you just wonder if they're just going to be a little bit dejected next week once again.
Geez, you set the bar low for yourself when you lose by double digits at home and you concede 36 and you get to say, that was one of our better performances. And Seabold, the excuse master, he was, to be fair, that was one of our better games. And it is true. And Tony Staggs is a dead set superstar, and him being out was one of many reasons why we were betting against the Broncos and saying, look, they actually won't be too bad when they get all these guys back. Of course, still Dave Fafita's out. Matt Lodge, Alex Glenn is out. Like, they're still actually probably a top 8 talent team if they all get back. It's far too late and they've got much more problems beyond talent. But you're right, it's not Kotoni Staggs that he's going to be in the huddle telling them what to do, but he's that kind of player that can make something happen and just says, follow me and get on my back, kind of like I talked about Cody Walker on Thursday. And talk about leadership. The Sharks have a true one in Wade Graham, and he's the same. He leads by example, and he had the match-turning play where the Sharkies were down 8 and the Broncos had a repeat set. And, I mean, it looked like the Broncos at that point are going to win the game. Yeah. And the Sharks are thinking, how do we let this slip? If you had Brisbane plus 4.5, I mean, you're home. There was 10 minutes to go. You're leading by 8. So it would take 3 Sharks scores. The Sharks drop it out, and it's a contest in the air, but the Broncos gather it. But Wade Graham, he traces the drop of the ball and then the rebound and forces just enough pressure that Dearden spills it. Wade Graham comes up with it. The Sharks score. I don't think the Broncos hardly touched the ball again in the final 10 minutes. The Sharks score 3 unanswered tries, and it was a huge win for them. Don't know if you saw the stat that was 9 of their 17 played for Newtown in the in the New South Wales Cup Grand Final last year. So it shows that the Sharks were far from full strength. They've had a tough year, and again, we've had an awesome season, but if I could go back in time a few weeks or months and give myself some information, I would tell myself to respect this Sharks team a bit more, because we haven't probably given them as much credit as we should. It starts with Sean Johnson, 29 years old. You started to think maybe his best years were behind him after a couple of patchy seasons, but he's back to his best. He's sensational. But this whole Sharks team, we talked about the punch they get off the bench, these big forwards, although Talakai, I think, moved into starting centre and had a barge over try, and they've just got some young, powerful forwards in this team, and that's a huge win for them. Now that cements their spot in the top 8, and they're going to have a lot of confidence moving forward, whereas Brisbane, yeah, they can try and take confidence out of it, but it's a really poor finish to a match.
And you're right, I think the Sharks deserve every little bit of credit that they get this season, because they've had every reason to quit on the season. A number of key players getting injuries. On top of that, Chad Townsend out for this one. So they've really pulled together their season, that's for sure. Let's move on to Saturday. And Saturday was the day that we had our only best bets for the week. The Roosters beat the Titans 18 points to 12. We thought the Titans would keep it close in this one. Had 2 best bets on the game and won both of them fairly easily. Really gutsy effort from the Titans, I thought. It's easy to fold, especially when you're playing the Roosters, you're playing the best team in the comp. And not only that, but it's easy to fold, like I kind of said, with this Cowboys side, when you have, disallowed tries or, bombed chances in the first half, and then you think you need every little thing to go your way to beat the Roosters. And they had 3 chances and, 2 chances and a disallowed try in the first half. Easily could have been tries, this Titans side. Didn't go their way, didn't hang their heads, came back and really took it to this Roosters side. If Corey Thompson played, would things have maybe been different? I'm not necessarily saying that the Titans would have won this game, but I thought it was a mistake to leave him out of the starting 17. I think he really needs to be in that side, whether it's at full. I understand, AJ Brimson got healthy and everything, but whether it's at fullback or on the wing, I think he really adds that spark to this Titans team. And I think, I can compare him to Dufty in a lot of ways. He's kind of small, he's energetic, and he really puts everything into every play and really boosts the team. Because this Titans side is another team that kind of doesn't have any spark guys. So I think he needs to be in the starting 13, that's for sure. But in terms of the Roosters, I don't think it's necessarily that they're coasting through the season anymore, because I think at this point of the season they kind of know that they've got to really switch on if they want to make the top 4. I know they've still got, a really good points differential, but I think more so it's just the injuries are catching up to them a little bit. We kind of mentioned it before this Titans game that, it's not just Cordner now, it's, a number of guys that lost at the start of the season. So even though I'd still consider this Roosters side the best team in the comp as they're currently constructed, I think we do maybe have to downgrade them just slightly. These injuries are starting to kind of catch up to them.
Depends what you mean by currently constructed, because Brett Morris is out now. You've got Angus Crichton is out. Cordner is out. Like on our power ratings, we have the Storm now higher than the Roosters. And if they would have met this weekend, I would expect the Storm would have beat them, because they got quite a few really key players are not playing right now. And the thing is, Trent Robinson's not going to panic. You have to expect this. It's a long season, even though it's shortened. It's 20 weeks straight. All he cares about is getting into September and October with a strong side in the top four, and then they know they can three-peat. So what I mean is he's not going to rush anyone back.
No.
If a player, is touch and go, they'll let them go. And I feel he's got the confidence in his team they can get results. But don't be fooled by this score, because you're dead right. I mean, the first half, the Titans had a couple of certain tries saved. One was an amazing tackle by Manu. One was just a spilled ball by AJ Brimson. The Titans had two different times a man sent to the bin, but the first one was very harsh. He got sent to the bin for tackling without the ball. And then, as if if you're going to make a harsh call, actually what I hated about that call was Perinara didn't give him 10.
Yep.
He gave the penalty. Roosters said, we're going to choose to kick a goal. Everyone's standing around and then he said, and then the Roosters were all remonstrating with him. And they say, a ref's never going to change his mind. But they dead set talked him into it. Yep. And then he goes, dead set, I was fast forwarding the game. And then they go, and then he goes, also, by the way, Titans, you got a bloke in the bin. I mean, they're a 20-point underdog and someone gets sent to the bin. And then what happened next? Next set, the Roosters scored a forward pass, blatant forward pass. It was a fucking NFL, thrown forward, trying to offload pass to Ikavalu. And I'm thinking, all right, well, you got a 20-point underdog that got a bogus sin bin and now a bogus try against them when they're down to 12. We don't want a game of footy here, obviously, because we're not really giving the Titans fair dinkum chance in this match. To their credit, should have probably been leading at halftime. We talk about the chances, but they're down 12-6. They fought tooth and nail to the end. They had the ball down 6 late. So great effort for the Titans. I know that you love Corey Thompson, but it's the best back in this whole team is probably AJ Brimson. So they have to build the back line around him. And then Sammy and Don both played well too. So if anything, it's a good selection dilemma that Holbrook has in this team, which the Titans haven't had for a while. And you look at who's coming next year and going to be in the forward pack. There's positivity around the squad. But yeah, for the Roosters, it wasn't just one flat game. Go back to last week. Honestly, they could have lost to the Warriors and they could have lost to the Titans. And that sounds absolutely crazy. But if you watch the games, they were the only real reason they won those games. They're just a little bit more composed, just a little bit more clinical with their execution when their chances come. And they are still really stout defensively. And I think they'll be okay with. I know Robbo, was disappointed that his team didn't carry on with it, but they can take the 2 points and move on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also kind of dismiss this one and say, just a bad game from the Roosters, but it's not just one bad game. Not necessarily bad, but there's a couple of close wins against bottom 4 teams now, 2 weeks in a row. So go back
to losing to a Storm without Munster as well.
That's right.
Yeah, they're struggling and they don't have their best players on the field right now.
Indeed, let's move on to the next one. It was the Cowboys losing a close one to the Raiders, 14 points to 12. We did like the Cowboys in this one. It was our favourite play of the round. We had 3 best bets on the Cows. We do cash all 3. And, it wasn't so much a bet on the Cowboys as it was a bet against the Raiders. I mentioned that it was a really tough spot for them. They'd had, 6 or 7 weeks of really, really tough games. And kind of now seemed like a little bit of a letdown spot for them. And also on top of that, missing, Chance Nickel-Clockstad, who's been one of their best this season. And they played that way. They were a little bit down. They came out of the blocks a little bit slowly. I thought that Rapana struggled a little bit at fullback, as you can expect for a guy that hasn't played that position consistently this season. But it's another tough win from this Raiders side that just has been absolutely gutsy this season. With a number of injuries, they notch up another close win. And for the Cows, they get the lead in the second half, and it's just one of those ones where shit teams go on with that, and you get the lead, you're up by 4 points, and immediately on the very next set, I think it was, you give away the lead again with some terrible edge defense there. So another gutsy win from the Raiders, and sometimes that's what you need to do, as a premiership contender, is get through these games when you don't play your best. And this was certainly one of those games for the Raiders, and another brutal loss for the Cowboys.
We did. We nailed the spot here that it was going to be a really tough day at the office for the Raiders, just with the schedule spot, with bringing a couple players to play their first game of the season. You're missing your fullback, as you say. Rapana's not a typical fullback, and although he's everywhere and he goes hard, but he had a mixed night. He had some awesome moments, but he also had errors in his game. But he didn't shy away from it at all. But look, if you just looked at the score and go, oh yeah, I knew that the Raiders would win that, maybe a bit closer than I suspected. I mean, the Cowboys should have won that game. They were up 6-0. They had so many chances early, and the Raiders barely had even hopped off the plane. They were barely awake, and yet somehow the Raiders were hanging in. And then the Raiders scored like an 80-meter try, just breaking one tackle, get an offload, and go down the wing and make it 6-all. And they had barely been in the game and they were level. But what I really thought just killed the Cowboys all night was fifth tackle options. I just thought Clifford just shocking kick after shocking kick. Like, couldn't get the ball in the end zone, couldn't drop any grubbers in the right spot, couldn't drop any bombs anywhere. They kicked, or when I say shocking end of set, sometimes the end of set was tackle 2 or tackle 3 because they had a mind explosion and kicked early and it never worked. The only results the Cowboys got off their kicks all night was if Rapana fumbled one or slipped over. And then just by luck, they got a repeat set from a Rapana error. But other than that, and I mean, it came all the way down to, you're right, like they got the lead. They scored a great try off an inside ball to Taumalolo. They're going crazy. They're up 4. And then the Raiders get down there. And Justin O'Neill shoots out of the line, comes up with air. Man, he's been so bad for many years now. And you don't expect him to win you a game, although he's played Origins and stuff. But you just hope he's not going to be out there losing you a game. But that was so bad, and they let the Raiders get back in front. But then they got repeat sets right at the end. They had a minute to go. Fatigued bodies out there, and again, it's just nothing doing, just in attack. And I think Michael Morgan, who may be a week away, had he played in this game, I really believe Cowboys probably would have won quite comfortably. So if anything, maybe we're lucky we cash our bets like either team 1 to 12 because of the ineptitude. Like, I hate to blame a guy like Clifford, but he played enough NRL games to not have the excuse of just being young. This is a great opportunity for him to be in there in the halves. Drinkwater and Morgan, as I said before, are out. And it just wasn't good enough, and it let the Raiders off the hook. And Ricky even said in the press conference afterward that his team didn't deserve to win. That says it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the last Saturday game. It was the one game that we got wrong for the week. It was the Panthers absolutely obliterating the Seagulls, 42 points to 12. We did think that Manly would have a chance in this one and thought that they'd have a chance to win this one. We did get that one wrong. And look, it wasn't a play against the Panthers. We know how good the Panthers are. We have bets on them to win the minor premiership. We think they're certainly a top 4 team. We know how good that they are. But, we got +6 with a Manly side that was playing at Brookvale. And honestly, I thought this game, huge game for both teams. I mean, Panthers to keep, top spot, Manly to stay in the 8. Really thought it could turn into a grind. The total was 36.5 points. It was the lowest total of the round. And you don't hate getting +6 with a low total, but look, once the game opened up, and it did very early, then the Panthers just have way more playmakers in this Manly side that's not full strength. And, that's Charlie Staines now, 6 tries in 100 minutes of footy, really, really solid. But for Manly, and it's easy to say now, but I mean, I don't think I'm being a dick saying I think it was a mistake to maybe play Dylan Walker in this one. And not just because he got injured within the first 10 minutes. I said last week, Cade Cuss was just starting to play really well. He had his best game that he's had for the whole season last week. And, maybe you could have found some other place for Dylan Walker, maybe shift him back into the centres. I don't know. But either way, Dylan Walker's injured now again, which is a big blow to this Seagulls side that was low on playmakers already. But yeah, really good performance by the Panthers, and they are just rolling, and it seems like a team of destiny this season. And look, we're looking pretty good with that Panthers to win the minor premiership bet now, but I'll get into why I was angry for the next game, the early game
Yeah,
Sunday.
We gave that bet out about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I think the Panthers have won 7 in a row now, and their schedule is such that they won't be an underdog for the rest of the season either. So it's kind of in their hands, and the points differential is getting healthier every week too. One thing about this Panthers team, one reason they are so good, and I'll say again because I said it a couple weeks ago, Nathan Cleary is a true superstar of the NRL, not an up-and-coming player. He's one of the best players in the competition, if not the best right now. And I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but I feel like I'm watching Jonathan Thurston again. That's the control he has, the kicking game, he can run, pulls the right rein. all the time, and this team follows. But the reason they're also so good, so many of them have played through the grades together, come through and played, 20s or reserve grade together. And I think if you want to look at average squad age, I think Penrith has a younger squad than Brisbane. I know Brisbane will love to tell you every single week that they got a young team, but here's an example of a young team that's been brought through. And hey, Gus's 5-year plan come into fruition 10 years later.
Sure.
But okay, a couple of things went against us. For one, if we bet against Penrith in the sense that we didn't think Coruscant was playing. He was in the reserves, so we rolled the dice and we lost. We came up snake eyes there because he started and he played a great game. Dylan Walker was back, and while we said we weren't fussed whether or not Dylan Walker would play, he got injured 2 minutes into the game. So that is quite unlucky when you're starting 5/8 is out after 2 minutes.
Yep.
That limited them. But, usually when a team loses by 30, and it's funny because this game was billed as match of the round, and it was the least close. In fact, you could argue, as I said before, 7 of the 8 games were quite close, and this was the one that wasn't, which was meant to be the blockbuster. But usually when a team loses by about 30, you'd say they just didn't show up and the effort wasn't there. And I know Cherry was not happy with his teammates, and Des was disappointed, but I didn't think Manly did a lot wrong. I really think that Penrith was just absolutely firing on all cylinders and playing close to perfect footy.
Yep.
And Manly actually had cut the score to 22-6, and they're knocking on the door right at the end. They actually had an overlap right at the end of the first half. You score a try, 22-10, 22-12. They threw an intercept, and luckily tracked it down to only concede a penalty and went down 24-6. But that pretty much summed up their night. They never really had much of a chance against this awesome Penrith team. We'll put our hands up. We thought we were getting good line value with Manly, but you have to be careful when you go against a team that's just red hot, which the Panthers are.
And look, that's going to happen sometimes, like we say, if you do take, a lot of underdogs. Every now and then, you're just going to get rolled. Let's move on to the early game today. It was the Eels winning a tight one against the Doggies, 18 points to 16. And just the Eels, were not at their best in this one. And, we didn't take the points with the Doggies because we really thought it was a tough spot for them to back it up again. It's kind of similar to our reasons for not taking the Warriors. We kind of say all the time, it's hard for a really bad team, and, the Bulldogs and the Warriors, bad teams, to really put in good performances 2 weeks in a row. And the Warriors did it, and the Bulldogs did it, and it surprised me. And once again, both, came back from adversity in both games. The Dogs are down in this one. They scored the final 2 tries of the match, and they really
Well, the final 3 tries, they were down 18
the final
right?
3 tries of the match. And they really had a chance in this one, and it just, I mentioned it with the other game, but it's you would never, for the people that didn't watch it, the Dogs are down 16-18, there's 20 minutes left, you get a penalty under the sticks, and Aiden Tolman takes a quick tap, and I'm just saying, this is what shit teams do. You would never, ever see a Storm team, a Roosters team, take a quick tap, down 2 with 20 minutes left in a penalty under the sticks. It's just unbelievable. So, whether that's coaching, whether it's just a brain explosion from Tolman, and, at the time, the commentators didn't make a big deal out of it. I was blowing up deluxe because obviously we didn't have best bets in the game, but if the Eels lose, that's great for our Panthers minor premiership bet. But it's just so dumb, and it just boggles my mind how, teams cannot get this right at every single time. There's no reason to be able to get this wrong. You're down 2. If you get a pen, that's what you're hoping to get, is a pen. Take the 2 under the sticks. Jesus Christ. But Eels, it was a tough, not a tough spot for the Eels, but it's an easy game to overlook. They got over this one. Don't take too much of it out of this Eels team. They are still a completely legit team. It was just a game that they kind of let slip a little bit.
I didn't think the Eels would overlook this match whatsoever because the Dogs had just upset the Knights, who were top 4. Right. So you knew that the Dogs are capable. The Dogs beat the Eels last year. These teams had already played, as I mentioned in the preview, in round 1, and it was 2-2 after an hour. And the Eels conceded, I think, 2 or 3 of the first 4 tries against the Tigers last week. They were losing the game roughly 16-4, 14-6, right? Yeah. So they knew they had to start well. They come out 18-0 today in beautiful, sunny afternoon. And at that point, you're thinking they're going to run up a score. And the Dogs, The Dogs had a try disallowed for obstruction that wasn't even sent upstairs. That
Yes,
was not
that's
obstruction. It was a
right.
defensive decision by Moses. Like, nothing went the Dogs' way at all.
Wateni's
And you
Lesniak
think,
plays it the fucking wrong way, and the Eels
yeah,
score off the very next play.
yeah, that was a funny one. You'll probably see in the highlights. So it's like everything that could have gone wrong for the Dogs did go wrong. And you just think it's never going to be their day. They started as a 16.5-point underdog. They dead set should have won. They come back to 18-16. They had so many opportunities, and you can epitomize the whole match in that moment of Tolman quick tap and goes himself. But it's the larger point that it's so. I feel like of all 16 teams in the comp, if there's any team that you want to score a try for your life, it's just not the Dogs.
Yeah,
Like when they really needed it, and when they had they'd get a set and they'd do nothing, but then the Eels would drop the ball and they'd have another chance and they'd have a full set on the Eels line, and you're just thinking, just come up with something, just one play. There's got to be something on. There's fatigued bodies. You've got to have some sort of shape. You've got to. They just never did. Like multiple times, just forwards running back into the teeth. And then it would come down to a final, play and just hoping to get some luck off a kick. And they fell short, and it was painful to watch. Like, because their attack is so limited, and these doggies, they try hard. And like Luke Thompson is a great buy next
He really
year.
is.
You look at what Trent Barrett's done for the attack of the Panthers. I mean, if he can get the doggies resembling anything near that, I don't know if they have the same talent level, but they're getting in Kotrick. But yeah, they're just so limited in attack. You still got to be able to score points. Defense gives you a chance to win, but points obviously is what you need to score to win the match. They fell just short.
And you're absolutely right. If there's any team where you're like, you need them to score a try for your life, the Dogs would be the last fucking team that you'd choose. And that makes it so much more unforgivable to take the quick tap down to late in the game. Anyway, look, that is going to do it for round 12 recap, guys. Thank you once again for tuning in, and another really good week. I think we won a little bit of money on our multis, but certainly 5-2 on best bets is a really good week, despite only 7 best bets. We were super selective and went really well on those ones. So guys, if you enjoy, share it with your friends, and like Jacob said, if you want to win $100 cash or one of 2 hoodies that we're giving away, go check out our Facebook group, Tripod Punters Tips Forum. Join it. You'll see it at the top of the page. Pretty easy to enter. So we'll see you guys at Wednesday night, 6 p.m. To preview round 13. Thanks for tuning in.
Lego.